Scarlet connects you.
Panama has broken off diplomatic ties with Taiwan and established them instead with China in a major victory for Beijing. Taiwan, the self-ruled island that China considers its own, is recognized by a dwindling number of countries, dropping from 30 to 20 in the past 2 decades. The president of Panama said our country and China are nations that are developing, and we share visions such as the importance of globalization. Taiwan has been a great friend to Panama, and we are very grateful to their friendship and cooperation to develop our country. Taiwan expressed anger, saying China had enticed Panama with money. Beijing has become the second largest customer of the strategic Panama Canal.
Germany is making the most of its G20 presidency to drum up global support for African development. Chancellor Angela Merkel says the world's richest countries should not only be investing more in the continent, but also supplying more military aid. Meeting with African leaders in Berlin ahead of next month's G20 summit, Merkel called on Western nations to help reduce the poverty and conflict driving migrants into Europe.
If
the lack of hope is too great in Africa, then of course there will be young people who believe they have to seek a new life somewhere else in the world. So if we work together with you to help your countries, then we also create more security for ourselves. And we can put a stop to people illegally profiting from the fate of others. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and other leaders have faced criticism from human rights groups for the way they handle domestic protests, and Western nations have been reluctant to arm them as a result. But Merkel praised recent African efforts to fight terrorism, and she backed France's call for a West African force to be given a UN mandate. The scene looks straight out of the reality show that made him famous. Donald Trump's first formal cabinet meeting did what the president loves most, celebrating himself.
Thank you, Mr. President, and just the greatest privilege of my life is to serve as vice president to a president who's keeping his word to the American people.
Deeply honored, and I want to thank you for keeping your commitment to the American workers.
I had the opportunity to represent the United States at the G20 Health Summit in Berlin and at the World Health Assembly in Geneva, and I can't tell you how excited and enthusiastic folks are about the United States leadership as it relates to global health security.
On behalf of the entire senior staff around you, Mr. President, we thank you for the opportunity and the blessing that you've given us to serve your agenda and the American people. Everybody.
Surreal, Soviet-like, the avalanche of praise was widely commented, and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer put together a mock video of his own.
Your tone was perfect. You were right on message.
Michelle, how'd my hair look coming out of the gym this morning?
You have great hair. Nobody has better hair than you.
Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity and blessing to serve your agenda.
That's great.
As France gears up to head to the polls in the country's National Assembly elections on Sunday, voting has already begun in its overseas territories. Despite varying degrees of autonomy, all of France's overseas regions have the right to elect members to Parliament, and this vote could see French President Emmanuel Macron shore up his term as leader with a big majority. Opinion polls have shown Macron's centrist La République En Marche party could see a landslide majority, with between 360 and 430 seats out of 577. The newly elected leader, who fought off Front National's Marine Le Pen in the presidential elections earlier this year, will face another challenge from the far-right party this time round, as it looks to capitalise on a recent surge in popularity.
There's been a powerful earthquake in the Aegean Sea off the coasts of Greece and Turkey. There are no immediate reports of injuries, but the 6.3 magnitude tremor felt as far away as Athens is said to have damaged several buildings on the Greek island of Lesbos. Turkish media said the epicenter of the quake was near the Karaburun district of Izmir province.
It's a very complex situation where common ground has to be found. Those words from the U.S. Defense Secretary in front of the House Armed Services Committee while being questioned about the blockade against Qatar by Gulf states.
I believe that Prince Thani inherited a difficult, very tough situation, and he's trying to turn the society in the right direction. But we all agree that funding of any kind of terrorist group is inimical to all of our interests.
During a visit to Paris, Qatar's foreign minister said his country backs Kuwait's mediation efforts and is ready to engage in talks if they conform with international law. But he also stressed that no one can dictate Qatar's foreign policy. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt cut diplomatic and transport ties, accusing Doha of supporting terrorism. Qatar denies the claims.
Televidente, nós vai break e ora nós back e deporte com nosso colega Carl Reiter.
Diamonds Craft situat net banda